All right, Hugh, you also have a fascinating illustration of how Jesus, when he was here on earth, could pass through walls and into the room where the disciples were at. How in the world can science help us understand that?
Well, John, the physics tells us that God has got access to extra dimensions of space, not just length, width, and height. I don't know if this is the way that Jesus did do it, but it's a way we can prove he could have done it. So, for example, I can take a two-dimensional plane and rotate it into a third dimension of depth like so, and now this plane becomes, from your perspective, a single line. Now you can take that single line and, taking advantage of a fourth dimension of space, you can rotate that line like so, and now it becomes a single point. You can take a sixth dimension of space and then rotate that point and make it completely disappear. And so one way Jesus could have entered the upper room is he could take his three-dimensional physical body and take it from dimensions length, width, and height and rotate it into three more dimensions that we can call the fourth, fifth, and sixth dimensions of space. And once in that fourth, fifth, and sixth dimension, now the walls and windows and the doors of the upper room would pose no barrier at all. He could simply pass right through, and once inside, he can take his three-dimensional physical body in dimensions 4, 5, and 6 and rotate it into 1, 2, and 3, the length, width, and height of the disciples. This also would explain how Jesus could appear and disappear in physical form to his disciples, such as on the road to Emmaus, where he would appear physically and disappear right in front of the eyes of his disciples. Again, I'm not saying this is the way he must do it. I'm just saying it's the way he could do it. Given the power that he has, he's literally got millions of different options for how he could physically appear and disappear and pass through walls.
All right, Hugh, here's a puzzling question. How can God be sovereign and in control of everything and yet give man free will to choose?
Okay, John, we know from these discoveries about the universe that God is capable of operating cause and effect before the beginning of time. In effect, he's got access to the equivalent of at least another dimension of time. It's a God that can create time at will. So there's no limit to how many time dimensions he could be operating in or their equivalent. So, for example, we can conceive of God's operation, say, in a sphere of time, where you've got a length of time, a width of time, and a height of time. So, for example, we could conceive of our existence in this universe on a timeline that's right about here, where you've got the beginning of the universe progressing towards the end of the universe. But notice that we could have God at the north pole of the sphere of time, dropping a perpendicular timeline down to the very beginning of the universe, another perpendicular timeline that would run down to this present moment, and a third perpendicular timeline that would run down to the very end of the universe when God conquers evil and replaces his universe with a brand new one. What you need to notice here is that over these billions of years, all these time points along our timeline come together at a single instant at the north pole of the sphere of time, which means that God, from a single moment, can be simultaneously controlling and operating events along these billions of years of our time. So this helps us to appreciate how God, before we were created, before the universe is created, can know the day of our birth, our present moment, the day of our death, and can be controlling events all along that timeline.
Follow-up question on that, just between us, and that is that also assumes that time has already happened. If it's in a straight line, I've already lived, and my kids have lived, and their kids have lived, all the way along the line. Does that mean that all events are there, or are they in the mind of God?
They're all there, but it means that God right now can see the day of your death and can control exactly what's going to happen. You know what it says with King David, that God has marked on his calendar the day his life will end. That's all been predetermined. And he actually experiences it in the now. We don't, but he can.
What I want Christians that are listening to pick up is that you can take the scientific evidence that's being presented on campus and you can use that evidence and you can bring them to the Lord.
Definitely.